is to produce a catalog for a car that's that ugly?
I have a feeling, but you did it, though. That's the thing. It takes
We
a
did do
talented
it.
person to find something that's really appealing in an angular hatchback crossover with a tent in it, right? Is that?
You know what? That is the truth. The interior was actually quite pretty. So the catalog had like 5 or 6 spreads of the interior first before we got to a picture of the exterior. So that's how we masked it. But in any event, so I took all these metrics, and everybody's career has metrics. Rob, your career has metrics.
Absolutely.
Somebody in sales, somebody that's in digital marketing, a doctor, a guy that does carpentry work, because, who knows how many walls that guy is framed in. The application of metrics to any job, I think, is applicable. And so what I did is I took my metrics and I went to an art director friend of mine, and I said, I want to build this snapshot that uses illustrations to highlight some of my key metrics. And because I come out of racing, let's give it a race theme. And so she worked up a beautiful graphic for me. And then I went, you know what? Let's throw this into Adobe Acrobat. Let's make my email link and the link to my profile website live. And I'm going to start sending this out as a conversation starter to people. Before I did that, I showed it on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn network went bananas over it. They thought it was a terrific idea as a supplement to a resume. And I agree, it's not a resume replacement. It is a resume supplement. You certainly need something that goes into more depth on what you've done. And you also need something for the applicant tracking systems to scan, because, the PDF isn't scannable because it's an image. So I've been using the snapshot to start conversations and to get people's attention. And it certainly got the attention of my LinkedIn network. And I had more than one person tell me that I needed to commercialize the idea. And so I did. After March transitioned into April and things were truly shutting down in the event industry, and I knew that I was probably headed for furlough, I had time on my hands. So I contacted another art director that had been furloughed from the same agency, and we came up with a design that we knew that we could make affordable, because we wanted this thing to be, not thousands of dollars or even, many hundreds of dollars, but if we could be affordable in terms of, what would a resume review cost somebody? Oh, that costs you a couple of $100. So we settled on designing something that would take about $100 worth of work to do. And so our next gig, because we hope it gets you your next gig,
right?
Our next gig career snapshot costs $125 plus tax. And we can have it turned around in 2 to 4 days. And it's a pretty slick looking graphic presentation of your metrics. And what we do is we take people's metrics. For instance, what would be a metric out of your career, Rob?
Let's see here. I would say something probably about my social media management, where I had a page I was responsible with over 2 million followers.
Perfect. Okay. So what we do is we'd get the number, we'd put 2 million plus, and there'd be a little caption underneath that would say followers of a web page I managed. And then we would have an icon, just a little line drawing of somebody's hand holding a mobile device with a screenshot on it. And so we would combine something that is visual plus the number plus your caption. And we would put that on a page with maybe 10 or 12 other similar types of numbers. And that would be your career snapshot page. And we've got neat color palettes that people can pick when they go through the process. And you can have it made so that it's a portrait orientation or a landscape orientation. So there's a lot of personalization that goes into these things as well. But when somebody gets it in their hand or they've got it up on the screen, it's like, bam. You can see a lot about somebody's career and their ability to deliver ROI as an employer very quickly. And it gives them a reason then to either look at your portfolio page or look at your LinkedIn profile or dive deeper into your resume. That's really what we hope the next gig snapshot can be. It's a hook so that they go deeper into what your background is and what your capabilities are.
Got it. So this is basically a add on to a resume that it takes advantage of the a picture is worth 1,000 words type thing, because you're trying to get somebody impressed with a resume with a glance, if you will. So these stats and these statistics, definitely something that can probably catch that eye. So maybe back up just a little bit here. You mentioned that what you kind of take and how it's put together, Rex, but like, how does somebody like myself give you the resume, and how do you guys kind of decide what's important with that?
Well, thankfully, we don't have to, because that's something that you'll do within the process.
Oh.
So we've got kind of a neat process at Career Snapshot. So you go to the site and you click on the next gig snapshot and you look at it and go, okay, I think this is something that could help me in my job search. I'm a motivated job hunter and it's worth it to really move my career and move it more quickly. You buy it, you immediately get sent a link to a Google form. And in the Google form, we walk you through step by step how to input after you've identified your metrics. And so you actually write your own. So you've got your resume in your hand, or you've got things in your mind, and you go through and you fill out this Google form. That gets sent to us. It populates a Google sheet that then we review before we select the art director that'll do the graphic for you. If we have any questions, we get back to you. And then the art director will take a first swipe at it. I review every first draft. As a matter of fact, I looked at one this morning for a guy in the PR industry. Looked at the first draft. I test all the links, make sure the copy is good, make sure the numbers make sense. And then we send it to the client. The client then can revise it. We make his changes. We check it one more time, and then it's done. We send a final PDF that's ready to go.
That is so cool. I'm glad you answered a couple of little extra questions I had kind of kicking around. Like, if I fill out your form, and I don't want to say do a bad job, but maybe I'm not as skilled at directing kind of the way that my career has gone, maybe talking about that or interpreting that. That's great to hear that there's actually some human oversight rather than just sucking it into a form and spitting it out the other end to somebody who makes art. And, artists obviously can interpret things in many ways. And I think getting them to the right level of interpretation probably is a very good skill. And again, you check every single one for the first draft.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow. That we got to find a way to scale that.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Well, it helps that the team that I'm working with, all these art directors, the minimum level of skill that they have working on Fortune 500 brands is 9 years.
Wow. Okay.
And so I'm not working with, a 15-year-old who happens to know how to work in, Photoshop or InDesign. These are mature, seasoned, professional art directors. And they're used to working with copy. They're used to working with clients. And so, you've got a serious team working to create these things. We do make sure that it does get that human oversight. For instance, one of the next gigs we did last month was for somebody in marketing, and she was writing her captions, and they were good captions and good metrics, but there was some repetition in certain words. Like she used the word managed too many times. So I offered her a couple of suggestions for some synonyms and some rewriting of a couple of the captions, just that gave it a bit more flavor and polish. And I think she appreciated that. And I think the piece looked better and has done a better job of communicating for her. And so, that just happens as a course of normal business for us. That's how we take care of our clients.
Sure. Well, and that almost sounds like, again, you mentioned this is sort of like a resume review, but it's not a resume review. It's that kind of customer care embedded into this art process, which is so cool.
If I could, the interesting thing, and I didn't realize this was going to happen when I started doing this, but our process has helped people improve their resumes, because unless you're in sales or unless you're in marketing, it might not, the idea of metrics and looking at your career in terms of metrics might not be something that you're used to doing. Salespeople are typically in tune to, well, that was a $8 million sale, or in total this year, I've done this much business, right, or whatever. But many people aren't. I had a teacher that we did one for, and I asked her, how many kids has she taught how to read? She said, well, gee, I've never thought of that. I said, well, think about it. That's kind of a neat metric. And she went back and figured it out, and it was an impressive metric. But people will identify metrics and then realize that they can revise their resume with those new metrics. And so it ends up making the resume a better communication device, a better storyteller about how they can deliver ROI for their next employer. So it does really help that process, even though that's really not what we intended. It's just kind of an ancillary benefit.
Now, I was thinking about this as we started our kind of initial conversation on this, Rex. The My Next Gig snapshot, I think, is a great thing, especially for somebody who's like maybe in my level of career advancement, middle to maybe upper middle management. Is there a minimum job level that something like a career snapshot would work for?
You know what? I think it would work for pretty much anybody. I've had a couple of people that are just out of school think about it. Haven't had anybody pull the trigger on it yet. But as I thought about what, a recent college grad might want to have in it, of course, one metric would be GPA. Another metric might be how many college activities they had been involved in,
Sure.
Things like that. So I think that you could do something like that, even just starting out. So no, I don't think there's any level.
Oh, good to hear. Because I had this thought of, somebody who, is maybe trying to advance from like frontline fast food work to be like 4 million pounds of potatoes shoveled in a year, into fries and things like that. And I just thought that was kind of funny. And is that a stat an employer wants to see? I don't know. And I suppose if it's a ludicrous amount of potatoes turned into French fries, it might even be worthwhile.
It's funny. My younger daughter is getting married in October, and we've gotten to know her fiance very well. He's a real good kid, and he managed a pizza shop for 2 years while he was in college. And he thought about, he's now 26, so he's quite a bit past that now. But he had talked about, well, gee, I could put a metric in of how many pizza pies I baked or had delivered or managed. And, I think that for someone very early in their career, one of the things that an employer is looking for, if they're a reasonable employer, they're just looking for somebody that's responsible. They're looking for somebody that has some type of experience. And so I think that metrics like that actually make sense.
Excellent. Got it. And that's, again, total angle I did not see from that. I'm thinking people, wanting to advance into marketing, into other fields, things like that. And then actually, Rex, that leads right into my next question. Are there particular industries that you find really benefit from this visualization? Obviously, everybody has some level of benefit, but are there ones that really have shown to be kind of honed in with this snapshot?
Salespeople tend to understand it best simply because it's most familiar to them. But I think once the concept of creating a snapshot becomes, or let's say get some critical mass behind it, I don't think there will be any limitations to groups that could use it or to people that could benefit from it. Like I said, it works for teachers. It works for construction jobs. It works for all types of skills, because no matter what job you have, you're always doing something. You're accomplishing some task. And, the idea is, all right, how do you ferret out what those numbers are? And I think about it, say in the event industry, you have guys that do show setup and show teardown. And it's like, all right, well, how many tens of thousands of pounds of equipment have you moved on and off a trailer in a typical year?
Right.
How many lights have you set for a show? How many miles of mic cable have you laid? All of that type of stuff. And you can do it for any industry. I'm a writer. I love telling stories. I love diving into stuff like that. So for me, it's easy. It may not be easy for somebody that's actually thinking about it, but hasn't ever done it. But if I could spend 5 minutes talking to you and come up with 10 questions to ask you about your career that would all lead to metric-based answers.
Interesting. Well, and again, that's, I think everybody getting into the idea of metric space, whether you're looking at a My Career Snapshot and grabbing one of those, or if you're just looking at your resume, I think metrics-based resumes probably are some of the ones that really people in HR latch onto. I remember at a past business I worked for, they had a concept of everybody has a number. And at first that kind of blew my mind a little